everyone, I'm the Tax Pro, and today we're going to talk about Form 1099 NEC. 1099 NEC stands for Non-Employee Compensation. This form has been introduced the last couple of years. So it used to be that all 1099 non-employee compensation payments were reported on 1099 miscellaneous. So 1099 NEC is a newer form that now splits out non-employee compensation away from 1099 miscellaneous, okay? So today I'm gonna go over what is 1099 NECs, how to fill them out. I'm gonna show you the instructions and walk through the instructions with you. So the IRS provides you with copies of Form 1099 NEC and instructions right on the IRS website. So I'm going to walk you through those resources. Super easy to find. You can go and look them up and follow along if you would like. So let's first talk about the purposes of 1099 NEC. So who files 1099 NECs? If you are a business, you are going to potentially have to file 1099 NECs for anyone that you are paying for services, okay? And so this is the about area. This is what the actual 1099 NEC form from the IRS looks like. So when you go to download it, it is going to give you a little attention information, and then we're gonna go down and take a look at the actual forms. So this right here, this red version, is the one that actually goes to the Internal Revenue Service. In addition, whenever you file a 1099 NEC, you must include a Form 1096. And I will show you that as well today so you can see what it is. So this is the copy that goes to the IRS. If you scroll down, you'll find that there's also some additional copies of Form 1099 NEC. So the second page is copy 1, and this is for the state tax department. Now, certain states require you to file 1099 NECs with the state, okay? It varies state by state. So if you need to file 1099 NECs with the state, you can send this copy as long as they accept paper copies that are in this format, okay? So each state is different. This one right here, copy B, is for the recipient. So if I'm a business and I am gonna file 1099 NECs, one copy goes to the IRS, one potentially is going to go to the state where the recipient has worked and potentially lived. One is going to go to the actual recipient. And then there's instructions that you're going to include for the recipient. So this goes along with the 1099 NEC. And then you can also include copy 2 to the recipient. So this is to be filed with their state income tax return if required, okay? So there's 4 separate 1099 NECs. They all get the same information. They're copies, right? So when you download this file, this page is for the employer to keep, so for you to keep. This page goes to the IRS. This page goes to the state if applicable. This page goes to the recipient along with this page and this copy, okay? You can bundle them all up in the same envelope, the ones that go to the recipient. When you file this initial copy here with the IRS, you must include a Form 1096, and I will show that to you here in a minute, okay? So let's go over who actually receives 1099 NECs. I'm going to go over to the instructions for Form 1099 Miscellaneous and 1099 NEC. You'll notice that the instructions are bundled together. That is because initially, 1099 Miscellaneous is where you reported your 1099 NEC activity, okay? They have since been separated. So what you'll see when you go to this page, it's first going to give you some information on what's new. It's going to give you some reminders, general instructions, and then it's going to give you some additional items. So specific instructions for 1099 miscellaneous. We're not going to go to 1099 miscellaneous. We want to go to the specific instructions for 1099 NEC. It's going to be quite a ways down. Okay, so specific instructions for Form 1099 NEC. You are going to file Form 1099 NEC for each person in the course of your business to whom you have paid the following. It's at least $600, okay? So anybody, this says person, but you could also be paying a business, and the business could also be subject to receive a 1099 NEC. Okay, so think of this as person or business. So you have paid them at least $600. This means that if you have paid $400 to Sally to come in and clean your office, Sally does not need a 1099 NEC, okay? So services performed by someone who is not your employee, okay? So this is a little confusing because 1099s go to people who are not W-2 employees. I see a lot of small businesses that get confused because they'll say, well, I have a 1099 employee. Technically, anybody who is not on a W-2 is not your employee. If you have an employee, they receive a W-2, okay? They have to go through the process of having withholdings, running through an actual payroll system that is going to withhold Social Security and Medicare if applicable. And then you pay in Social Security and Medicare. There's a few exceptions, such as clergy members, but that is a W-2 employee, okay? And then you withhold federal income tax and remit that to the IRS. 1099 workers are technically not employees, so there's a huge issue with employee misclassification. I'm not going to get into that with this particular video. That's a whole separate video in and of itself. Just keep in mind that 1099 employees are not a thing. Okay, so when this says services performed by someone who is not your employee, if you say, well, I have 1099 employees, one, you need to make sure they actually shouldn't be on payroll and receiving a W-2. Okay, if that's the case, then we have a separate issue that we need to work through. Two, if they are truly a contractor and are truly a 1099, they may still need to receive a 1099, like even though you call them an employee. We need to stop calling people who aren't W-2 employees because it can get you in trouble. But services performed by someone who is not your employee, that could still, even if you call them an employee, this means services performed by somebody who's not receiving a W-2 from you, okay? And payments to an attorney. So you're going to file Form 1099 NEC or Form 1099 miscellaneous to report sales totaling $5,000 or more of consumer products to a person on a buy, sell, a deposit commission, or other commission basis for resale. Okay, so if you have somebody that is essentially you're selling products to, and then they're on like a commission basis, you may also have a reporting requirement. So 1099 NECs. There's some exceptions here to this $600 and to these particular people. You'll notice down here, reportable payments to corporations. The following payments made to corporations must generally be reported on Form 1099 NEC. What that means is when you bring on a contractor, so I've brought on Sally, she's gonna help me clean my office, okay? And I'm looking and I am gonna end up paying her at least $600 in the year. First thing that I need to do is I need to request her identifying information. Because if you notice on this form 1099, I need to know the recipient's TIN right here. I need to know her tax identification number. I need to know her name. I need to know her address, okay? I have to request that from Sally. And I should, in the course of my business, request this information before I pay her that $600 threshold, okay? You request that information via Form W-9. So request for taxpayer identification number and certification. This is really important that you get this before you have paid that individual or that business $600. Okay, it's really important that you collect this information. So what's going to happen is they're going to fill out this information. They're going to fill out their name of the entity or the individual. They're going to fill out the business name, and then they're going to tell you how they're taxed. If they are taxed as a corporation, generally they do not receive a 1099. Okay, so if Sally comes in and tells me she's an S corporation or she's an LLC taxed as an S corporation, so she's checked this box and there's an S here, I do not have to issue Sally a 1099 NEC. There are exceptions here. If an attorney is taxed as a corporation, I still have to file a 1099 for that attorney. Okay, so here's the exceptions. If they have told you that they're a corporation on their W-9. Sally, because she's cleaning my office, if Sally is a corporation, she doesn't receive a 1099. If I go to Tracy and she's my attorney and I have paid her $2,000 in the course of business, right, for the year, and I have paid her $2,000 and she, on her W-9, has marked that she's taxed as a corporation, Tracy still gets that 1099 because she is not eligible for that exemption, even though she's taxed as a corporation, okay? So, payments to attorneys, they are reportable on 1099 NEC, regardless of whether or not they are corporations. Other businesses, as long as they don't follow or fall under the exceptions for corporations, they still receive a 1099 NEC, okay? So they would still receive one. Now, let's talk about some other exceptions. There are some other exceptions too, and some other payments that are not subject to reporting on 1099 NEC. So what are those? 1099 NEC amounts are going to be payments that would not be potentially subject to reporting on 1099-Ks. And this is really confusing for a lot of people, so I'm going to take a little bit of time to explain this. 1099-Ks are 1099s that are issued by payment processors. Payment processors like PayPal, payment processors like QuickBooks. Those payment processors, if a business does enough processing through that payment processor, they will reach a threshold for 1099-K reporting. Okay, that is where PayPal, for example, will send a 1099-K to the IRS and say, this business processed $200,000 worth of payments through PayPal in 2024. If we have paid Sally through PayPal and we have marked goods and services, Sally's payments are potentially subject to 1099-K reporting. And because they're potentially subject to 1099-K reporting, they don't go on 1099 NEC, okay? So if I have made payments to this contractor, this law firm, this other business that is providing services to me, if I have made those payments through a payment processor, such as QuickBooks, if I have made it through PayPal and I have marked goods and services, okay, so not personal payments to friends and family, but payments through goods and services, PayPal is responsible for dealing with the 1099 reporting requirements, okay? I am not at that point in time. So what goes on the 1099 NEC is going to be payments that you have paid to a contractor through check, because checks aren't going through payment processors, right? Now, if you're doing an electronic check, that's a different story. Those may have gone through payment processors. So like a physical check that you write out gets reported on 1099 NEC. If you have paid somebody cash, actual physical cash, that cash payment gets reported on 1099 NEC as long as it meets the requirements of the $600 and the corporation exceptions. So cash, physical checks, if I have paid via PayPal, but I paid friends and family, that goes on 1099 NEC. Because friends and family payments are not subject to 1099K reporting. Okay? One of the questions that I see frequently here is, well, how do I know if they got a 1099K through PayPal? It doesn't matter if they received that 1099K or not. If that payment is potentially subject to 1099K reporting, that's all that matters. Okay, so it's not your job to know if PayPal truly issued the 1099K. That's beyond what you need to worry about. Your concern is whether or not that payment is potentially on a 1099K. Okay? Other payments that would go on 1099 NEC is if you do a direct ACH from your bank account or a direct wire. Those don't run through payment processors generally. So if those aren't running through payment processors, that would be subject to 1099 NEC reporting. Anything that's not going through a payment processor. Okay? So now that we've gone through who is going to receive a 1099 NEC, let's talk about how to fill this out. Okay? So, all of these pages are the same. What you're going to do is you'll notice these two boxes up top, void and corrected. You don't have to worry about those if you are filing an initial 1099 NEC for the year. Okay, I'll go over those in a second. So you're going to put payer's name. So this is your information, your business's information, the business that paid this contractor. You're going to put your name, your street address, and then, your mailing address essentially, and your telephone number on here. So if I could potentially put like ABC Corporation, I am on 111 First Street, Springfield, Ohio, 45502, and my phone number is 555-555-5555, right? So that would be the information that I would put in the payer's name, street, address, telephone number. Payer's TIN. TIN stands for tax identification number. Okay, so if I own a business, I probably have an EIN, so an employer identification number. If I have an EIN, my payer's TIN is my EIN. Okay? If I don't have an EIN, there are some sole proprietorships that don't have an EIN. Your social security number is your payer's TIN. Now, I highly, highly, highly suggest you get an EIN for you personally. You can go to the IRS website and get that. I don't recommend putting your social security number on a 1099, okay? You can go to the IRS website and you can get an EIN for you as an individual, as an employer, okay? That's what should go there. Technically, you can use your social security number. I don't recommend it. Recipient's TIN. So this is the recipient's tax identification number. And you're probably saying, well, how the heck do I get that? Should have sent them this W-9, right? So this W-9, you're going to get this information, and they're going to put their social security number or their employer identification number right here, okay? So whichever number they put here is what you're going to put in the recipient's TIN's box, okay? You're also going to put their name, their street address, their city, town, state, all that good stuff. That information, again, can come from the W-9. Now, I know some of you out there have not collected a W-9 and you're saying, oh, I didn't collect a W-9, now what? You need to send a W-9 to your contractor and request the information, okay? I've also seen situations where contractors say, yeah, you know, we ended on bad terms and I'm not going to give that to you because I don't want a 1099. You're saying, oh, okay, great, now what do I do? Because I need to file this form, but I don't have the information, okay? Here's the way that I handle it. I say, I have your information, I have your business name or your personal name, and I have your mailing address, okay? And you should find out that information if you don't have it. Here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna file this 1099 regardless of whether or not you give me your tax identification number. However, if you don't give it to me, I'm gonna check this handy box right here that says second TIN not, and that tells the IRS that you refuse to give me your tax identification number. And then they're gonna have questions for you. Not gonna be fun for you, okay? So that is always an option. If you can't get the recipient's tax identification number, the answer is not to just not file the 1099. The answer is to check this box so the IRS knows this individual at this address, I paid them this amount of money. They're not letting me properly report it to you. I'm going to mark this box. There is a fine that you as the business may receive for not having collected that information before you issued their payments. Okay, so be aware when you check this box, you might get a little bit of a fine, okay? So just be aware that is the option, that is the correct way to do it. You may be subject to a little bit of a fine. And lesson learned, don't do that again, right? Then you're gonna put the amount of non-employee compensation that you paid them, okay? So if you paid that individual $7,000 for the year, you're gonna put $7,000 on here. You also wanna make sure you fill out the 4 calendar year up here. So 2024 is this coming tax season, right? We're in 2025, so we're gonna be filing 2024's tax return. Federal income tax withheld. This tells the IRS, hey, when this contractor filled out this W-9, part of what they do is they certify that they are not subject to backup withholding. Okay? So they certify that they are not subject to backup withholding as a contractor. What ends up happening is if that contractor owes the IRS money, the IRS is going to say, you have to have income tax withheld from your payments even though you're a contractor and you're not an employee. As a business that is utilizing that individual or that business's services, you are then required, once they fill out this W-9 and they tell you, hey, by the way, I am actually subject to backup withholding, you're then required to withhold federal income tax for them. Okay? So if that happens, you're actually required to withhold federal income tax and remit it to the IRS. So you're going to put on here the amount that you withheld from that contractor and you sent to the IRS. Okay? Now, if you withheld withholding for the state, you're going to put that information here. So this contractor may also be subject to state withholding, at which point in time you're going to report the amount of state tax withheld, that payer's state information, and the state income amount, so the amount of income earned in that state, okay? Lots of information on here. Now let's go over a couple of items that I did not go over yet. Account number right here. You don't have to fill this out, this is optional, but if you have a specific account number assigned to that vendor, you can put the account number on here. This is for like internal tracking purposes. If you have, if the payer, so you, made direct sales totaling $5,000 or more of consumer products to the recipient for resale, you check this box, okay? If you are filing an amended or a corrected 1099 NEC, so let's say that you file a 1099 NEC and then, oops, I miscalculated. You know, something happened and I accidentally forgot a payment, or I reported a payment that I actually gave them the following year or the year prior, got a little bit of mixed up. You would mark this corrected box and you would file the corrected return. So initially you would have filed a 1099 NEC with nothing up here marked, right? To correct it, you would file the 1099 NEC with the correct information and check this corrected box. If you need to avoid the 1099 NEC, let's say that you realize, oh, I accidentally submitted a 1099 NEC and this information is actually reportable on a 1099K, you're gonna fill it out and you're gonna void it. Okay? So you mark the void box. Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna go over this information one more time, just as a summary, and then I'm gonna show you how you submit this, okay? So you should have gotten a Form W-9 from your contractor, okay? This W-9 is where you get their information. It's where you get their tax identification number, their name, their business name, their address, okay? It's where you learn, are they taxed as a corporation? Because they're gonna tell you how they're taxed. If they mark LLC and they put a C or an S in here, they're taxed as a corporation. It's where you're gonna get their identification number, and it's where they're gonna certify whether or not they're subject to backup withholding, okay? They're subject to backup withholding. You have to set up federal income tax withholding for them and potentially state. So you should have gotten a W-9 from these contractors. If you did not, before you hit the $600 threshold, there's a process in which you request it from them, you request it again. When they say no, you come over here to Form 1099 and you mark this box, and then you don't include the recipient's TIN. Comes with a little bit of a fine on your part because you should have gotten that already, but that's the correct way to do it. Once you have the information, as long as they are not exempt from receiving a 1099 because they are a corporation, and remember, not all corporations are exempt. Attorneys, for example, can be taxed as a corporation and still be subject to 1099 NEC, okay? Once you determine that they're not exempt because they're a corporation or because the payments are subject to 1099K reporting, then you go in and you put payer's names, that's your information right here, your address, your telephone number, your tax identification number, the recipient's tax identification number, their name, their mailing address. You don't have to fill out account number, but you can. For calendar year 2024, if we're talking about the 2024 tax year, the total amount of non-employee compensation that you have paid them, federal income tax withheld, if any. If you did not withhold any, you can just leave this blank. The state information for the state tax withheld. And then if you made direct sales totaling $5,000 or more of products to the recipient for resale, you would check this box, right? So at that point in time, you didn't pay them, they paid you, so you would leave the non-employee compensation box blank. Essentially what this does is this tells the IRS, hey, they have a business selling items, you should go make sure that they're filing tax return, okay? So you have all these different forms, one of which goes to the IRS, okay? One of which is gonna go to the IRS. Let me pull up Form 1096 for you. Okay, when you send in your 1099 NEC or 1099 miscellaneous, it has to be accompanied by Form 1096. This is Form 1096. I'm going to show you what this looks like really quick. This has your filer's names. This is your name, your street address, your city or town, name of person to contact about the filing. So if you're filing it, that's going to be you, your email address, your phone number. If you have a fax number, your fax number, your employer identification number, or your social security number. Then you're going to have the total number of forms that you are filing. So if you have like 6 1099 NECs and 3 1099 miscellaneouses, you're going to have a total of 9 forms, okay? And then you're going to have federal income tax withheld, so the total across all the forms, the total amount reported with this Form 1096, so it's the total amount that you're reporting, and then you're going to mark all the forms that you are filing. Okay, so there's all these different forms that you could potentially be filing. 1099 miscellaneous and 1099 NEC, which are going to be the most common that you're dealing with, are right here. So you would check this box, okay? You would sign it, and then you would move on. So if you are paper filing 1099 NECs, which I don't necessarily recommend, but if you're going to mail in these 1099 NECs, you may be required to, for correction purposes, that kind of thing, you are going to include copy A here, okay? And then you're going to include one Form 1096 with all the 1099s, okay? So if you have 15 1099s, you would end up with one Form 1096 and 15 1099s, okay? So Form 1096 accompanies all your Form 1099s. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if I have to send in corrected forms at that point in time? Do I send in another 1096? Yes. And you only total the amount that you're sending in with that particular 1099 or 1096, okay? So that's Form 1099 NEC. You can actually electronically file these. There's a bunch of systems that allow you to do that. So if you have QuickBooks, you can file it through QuickBooks. If you have another bookkeeping software, some of them allow 1099 submission. There's specific 1099 only softwares online like Track 1099, Tax 1099 that allow for an electronic submission, which is a little bit easier. Sometimes they will also allow your contractors to pull the 1099 forms electronically, so they'll send an email to the contractors and be like, hey, you can download your electronic form, right? Now, if your contractor says, I don't want to receive it electronically, you have to mail it to me, you do need to mail it to them, okay? But a lot of them like having the electronic version because they can pull it up from their email if they forget or if they lose it, okay? So that, in summary, is how you file 1099 NECs. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.